Hi there, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are super thrilled to have a WESIS webinar with our strategic partners, Accenture, and they are going to be discussing, we have an incredible panel here discussing cracking the code, empowering women in cybersecurity. So this is fabulous. My name is Lynn Dome. I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WESIS, W-I-C-Y-S, pronounced WESIS, like we sisters, because that's exactly what we are. We are a cyber sisterhood. And so our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, and we do so by creating opportunity. We have over 5,100 members with representation in over 70 countries. We have 40 professional affiliates, which are mini WESIS organizations in Africa, Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, the UK, and all throughout the United States. And in addition to that, we have over 140 student chapters in Canada, Costa Rica, India, Nigeria, and throughout the United States as well. So again, our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, and we do so by creating opportunities. We have an online member forum where all our members network and connect. Within the forum, we have special interest groups such as Latinas in cybersecurity, or data privacy, or cybersecurity law. You name it, there's a conversation in there for you. And if there isn't, you go ahead and start your own special interest group. We have many different skill development training programs built out by AWS or Target, and SANS Institute provides CyberStart licenses for our student chapters, and so much more. If you check it out at wesis.org, you'll see all our various training programs are lined up there. We have newsletters, webinars, also scholarships, grants, and awards, not only for the WESIS conference, which is coming up March 17th through the 19th in Cleveland, Ohio, but also for other conferences as well. A cyber talent emergency fund is available for college students that receive medical emergencies or can't pay their rent, or their car breaks down. They could receive up to $599 within 48 hours. The speaking and media opportunities are developed so that our members could be what others can see, and that's the cybersecurity students and professionals that they are. And the Job Board Plus Plus is for strategic partners like Accenture to be able to post their jobs year round, and also to be able to recruit from the over 900 resumes. Every member has the opportunity to have a portfolio, or build up their profile and add their resume to the Job Board Plus Plus. In addition to that, we have apprenticeships, internships, leadership summits, virtual and in-person career fairs. Our mentor-mentee program has 775 mentees and 191 mentors in it, and so much more. And we owe all that thanks to our strategic partners, AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Facebook, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, AbbVie, JP Morgan Chase & Company, LinkedIn, Navy Federal Credit Union, Nike, Sentinel One, Wayfair, Workday, Accenture, American Airlines, Arctic Wolf, Champlain College, Dell Technologies, Envestnet, Flatiron, Fortinet, Haystack Solutions, Here Technologies, the Home Depot, IBM, Indiana University, MITRE, Motorola Solutions, Oak Ridge National Lab, Palo Alto Networks, PayPal, Salesforce, SANS Institute, Schlumberger, SmoothStack, Spiritix, Starbucks, Target, University of California, San Diego, and Verizon. Whoop, it is a mouthful, and we love and adore every single one of our strategic partners, and we're so grateful for Accenture to be here today and provide this webinar to our WESIS members. So I'd like to encourage you is to ask questions. We have this outstanding panel here today, and so this is your opportunity and your time to be able to put in these questions and be able to get answers on how you could advance and progress in your professional development and career based on others' experiences as well. So if you haven't done so already, join the WESIS organization. We're a member-based organization. Subscribe to our newsletter or follow us on social media. However, what resonates with you, would love for you all to just be involved and be a part of the WESIS org. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to Amberly so she could just go ahead and dive right in and take this webinar away.
All right, thank you. And so let's get started. Today's webinar is going to be Cracking the Code, Empowering Women in Cybersecurity. So we did have our introduction by Lynn, and I'm going to be just quickly introducing our panelists. And each panelist is going to go through their story, talk about barriers they've broken through, and just their journey into their career in cybersecurity. After they're complete, we will have some audience Q&A, so please put any questions you have in the chat and we will answer them as quickly as we possibly can. So first we'll start with Chanel Massey, and then Kate Reich, Avani Patel, and Alana Bazavan. So I will pass it off over to Chanel and she can start with her story.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Amberly. Just let me say that it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm honored because I just sometimes don't think that there's anything special about my story, but I think that's what's special about it, right? Is that we all have our stories and it's unique. There are, of course, things that tie us together, but our journeys are our journeys. And if there's anything that I would like for anyone to take out of my story that I'm going to share is that I like to allow my gifts to make way and room for me, and understanding that my gifts are my own and your gifts are your own. And the way that you have to go about your journey may not look the same way that my journey looks, but there's things and keys that we can take that help each other along. So it's a pleasure to be here. I started in IT just in a weird kind of way, out of necessity. I needed a job. I was out of college and I was married, and I went to a temp agency, and they sent me to an organization that was going through a big transformation, and they ended up not needing me. And the lady was like, hold on a second. I feel so bad that you're here. I have a friend who needs a temp. Let me show him your resume and see if he wants to interview you. And so he did. And it was with an identity and access management department that was growing at the time. They were transitioning from a New York office to a new headquarter in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I remember vividly him saying that I'm going to show you exactly what I need done, and I need you to do it exactly this way, and you have a job for 30 days, and that's it, if you do this correctly. And I was removing people out of the mainframe because they were cleaning up the system. It was right when Sarbanes and Oxley came down, and was really putting a hold on financial organizations to make sure that they were securing personal identifiable information for their users. So that's what I got called into. And that's how I got introduced to the whole world of IAM. I started off as an administrator and, was the peon that I was at the time, but I learned so much. I learned not just about identity and access management or security, but I learned about how to function and how to be a part of a group in an organization. And for me, it happened to be one that at the time looked very much like myself. Um, we got tagged as being the Black department, and I'm not certain why. It's very just was not indicative of the company or the environment, but we happened to have a team that was predominantly African American, including the manager who had been with the company for 35 years, I believe, at that time. So what it did was my first real introduction into big corporate America and IT was a very comfortable environment for myself, comfortable just with the vernacular, comfortable with people who I didn't think, were not my peers. On the flip side of that, if you know me personally, then you know that my closest friends don't look like me at all. So I had an opportunity to grow in an environment where that I understand that a lot of people who are like me don't get to grow. It was great. And then it wasn't. because there comes a time when you have to grow outside of that environment and things change. And then you have to be a part of the world and the world as it is for the majority of users. And I say users, but the majority of workers. And that's where I really started to hit my own personal barriers, and I started to shy back. Whereas, if you know me, like, I'm a very extroverted type of person. I get very excited, very passionate. And whereas in the environment that I grew in IT, it was seen, as that was normal. And there was a group of people who understood that emotion and that passion. It was very indicative of our culture. I went to an environment where it was seen as though I was angry or aggressive. And, I began to get labeled like that and marked like that. And it sometimes was not about the work that I was producing or the ideas that I had, but, oh, there goes Chanel again. And, she's going to push her way, or, the perception was different. And that was the hardest barrier for me. At the time, I didn't know how to take it. And so I stepped back and I held myself back from who Chanel was. And I didn't grow. My career didn't grow. I did fine. And I remained right at the level where I was at. And I remember applying for a new position at that organization, and I stayed for 14 years, not just the 30 days. But I was talking with HR, and they were like, they gave not one bad thing about, what you can improve on or why you didn't get the promotion. It was just they chose to give it to someone else. And she was like, I think that maybe you have to look at the way you're being perceived. And I'm not saying that you have to change yourself, but I'm just saying that you have to look at what you're putting out and how that's being perceived, and then decide, what do you want to do about that? It just so happened that I grew and worked my way into a position where I worked myself out of a job, because of what I do now, right? We started automating the systems. And, although I was learning and doing, allowed to do great things in an organization, I wasn't given that recognition, and like, financially or with positions and titles. And I'm really, really grateful that I was raised with the mentality that, not to get bitter, but to get better, right? I didn't take what was happening to me and, like, oh, I'm not going to work as hard anymore, or, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to treat someone some type of way. My mentality was, I'm going to show you that you made the wrong decision because I'm going to do it better. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to play by your rules. I'm going to listen harder. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to use you as my mentor, even if you don't realize that you're being my mentor. And so by the time I was given, choice, it was like, hey, like, this position, is up. It's like, you've grown all that you can grow. We're changing the organization. And my journey, like, your gifts make room for you. Where I wouldn't have left and I was comfortable, I had to go. And so here comes Accenture. And it's an organization where, for me, I'm like a fish out of water. I've only been industry side. But then it was this great potential almost. It was like the gates had been opened and with all these possibilities. And then there were people who looked like me. There were people who looked like people who I hadn't seen at all in these types of positions. And it was an amazing opportunity. And so I really didn't even think about my career. It really was, I want to learn from these people, right? And it's like, I got to meet these people and they're doing fascinating things. And I want to know, how are they doing these fascinating things? And as I focused on that, you build relationships. And then I was able to ask, hey, am I coming across this way? And you found mentors that were like, I've been where you are. I know why you feel like that. I know why you feel like this is this imposter syndrome. I don't want you to doubt yourself. And not only I'm not going to let you doubt yourself. I'm going to try to create an environment where you and other people are free to express themselves based off of your experience, based off of your expertise, where we don't have to have these types of barriers. I've even been, I've had situations here where I've had senior managers at Accenture who have started out conversations saying, I know in your culture, it may not be common for you to have a strong female leader like Chanel. And I understand that that may be a change. Here are some resources that we have available to you at Accenture, to help you with diversity, and so that I learned from that. And so I tried to not only benefit from that, but to be that. And so if there's anything that I can say that have advanced my career, it is allowing my gifts to make room for themselves. Never thought I would be in IT. I do, I have a communications degree, and I do change management for IT because I'm genuinely Chanel. I'm not going to be a coder, but I understand this world. I've been in it, and I use what I'm good at, communicating, and I use it for where, my journey has led me, right? Two, I really understood that a delay is not a denial. And just because I was being held back, whether or not it was valid, wasn't an excuse for me to act out, but was a reason, and it was an opportunity for me to get more focused and to be better at what I am saying I'm good at. And, finally, lastly, it's always, we don't advance off of our own merits, all the time, but doors that are open. And so understanding the opportunities and seeing them, recognizing them, being ready for them, and taking advantage of them, and then being the change that I want to see, and reciprocating and allowing myself as I grow to be able to open that environment for others. So that's that's about my story and my barriers. And if there's anything I'd like to tell my younger self, is trust the process. Trust the process. Doesn't matter if my process doesn't look like someone else. I graduated like early from college, did this, did that, and then got caught in a slump. And I saw my peers' career growing and their salaries growing. And I'm just right here. But to not get caught up, in what it looks like, get caught up in the work. And so it was a pleasure to speak with all of you today. And I look forward to any questions that you all have. And I'll pass it on to the next person. Thanks.
So I don't know how I follow that. And I have had such a great journey in getting to know you, Chanel, but I always love learning more, and we have these opportunities to do that. So awesome story. Taking notes here. I have quotes in case anybody wants them. I'm going to reuse them. So it's nice to see all of you. My name is Kate Reich. I'm senior manager in our security practice. I have the pleasure of working with all these ladies and many more. And I loved what Chanel said about a couple of things. So I'll pull threads. My story is definitely a unique one. I am 100% a career switcher. And my journey and soiree into cyber was not anything I could have seen when I graduated with my communications undergrad degree, the top one, moons ago. Actually, yes, right at the turn of the century. Gosh, that's scary. So, but the journey for me has been a very insightful one, and one that has challenged me in ways that I never imagined. So I worked about a decade, a little bit longer, in various industries in the Metro DC area. I've lived here my whole life, and I've gotten great exposure to lots of large networks. And I was in a defense contracting position for the Department of Defense, and I had one of the best allies that I still have to date. He was a boss of mine, and he pulled me into his office and he said, Kate, you are way, underutilized here. And I said, well, what do you mean? I'm doing everything I need to do on time. I'm meeting all of these goals, these objectives. He goes, no, you're not being challenged. And at the time, I really couldn't see it. And because I was in an environment where, because I didn't have a technical degree, I was put into a wedge of do this work. So nevertheless, he said, I think you need to pay attention to what's going on in the department relative to cyber investments. And so I did quite a bit of research. I talked to a lot of folks who were preparing our cyber testing for acquisition systems. And I made the decision to go back and get my master's degree in cybersecurity. So talk about a wise pivot and an uncomfortable pivot. There I was. I had 2 children under 3 at the time. And I said, I've got to change my stripes. Why? Because I have a massive interest in this emerging area. I always have had a passion for the future and where things are headed and how we can be disruptive. And I'm also, like Chanel, not a quiet person. So I wanted a space where my voice and ideas could be heard and have a seat at the table. And I knew to even have a seat at that table, I had to brush up my education. So I did schooling online at night for 2 years. I went back to school, got my master's in cyber. It was definitely difficult, but it wasn't unachievable. And it was because I had a great support system in both family and friends and my kids. And in my opinion, as a working mom and a proud working mom of 3 now, not 2, it was the right investment in myself at the time. And so one of my main takeaways from my journey and career switching into cyber, of which I've been in the field less than 10 years now, is you always have to be a little bit selfish to invest in you. You matter. And we cannot pour from an empty cup. And one of the things that I've learned quite a bit through COVID and this remote work environment is we will tend to give and give and give of ourselves, especially as women in cybersecurity. And I do think part of it is back to, you know, how we are as women, right? We're nurturers. We tend to bring people in, regardless of our personality type. That's just who we are. And in many ways, I think that we can and are labeled and positioned for certain roles that maybe exploit that. And so we have to be pretty good about saying, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I'm still learning that lesson, which is why my peers might be shaking their head, because they've all told me from time to time, learn how to say no. So in any case, I went back, I got the degree, and then I went to a Women in Technology networking event locally. And I sat and talked with people from Accenture, and the work they were doing sounded so different and inspiring. And I knew, by the way, that if I wanted to get a seat at that table, I had to change jobs, because where I was, they knew me as the person, you know, who was in a different role, not the cybersecurity professional. And it's very hard when you're in an organization to change your brand without the right advocacy and sponsorship. So I did that. I joined Accenture, first starting in our Accenture federal practice, maintaining the space where I was. And then I pivoted into our corporate practice, working across industries. And now I am very excited about the role I hold, and I serve as our client innovation services lead at our cyber innovation hub in DC. And my job really brings the best of my gifts to life. And that was another lesson I learned, Chanel. So it's so weird. We didn't even talk before this presentation, gang. And this is how, like, sometimes people cross your paths for a reason. But I know the value I bring in cyber isn't the hacker. It's not the incident responder. But oh, by the way, I've done incident response, global incident response. But the value that I brought in all of those roles went back to who I was and my natural gifts and abilities, amplified by my knowledge. I am very proud to have come from a family that is incredibly hard workers. And my grandfather was an Italian immigrant, and he said, you are worth minimum wage from the neck down, meaning no one can ever take your education away from you. And that's something I try to instill in my children. But I think in cyber, the best part about our industry is no matter what your background is, you can absolutely pivot and change lanes and change highways and go in new directions and try new things. And all of us on this call have done that. Even during my time at Accenture, I have had the opportunity, as I said, to both be in our federal practice, working with intel and defense clients. I've worked in global incident response, where I was in a war room. Those were very long hours, but my job was to make sense out of chaos. And I did it okay. I've worked in medical device security. So I've helped hospitals understand, are we keeping patients safe? Could we kill somebody? Because, by the way, cyber is core to everything we do now, and information technology. I've worked for global technology companies with penetration testing. So securing, all of the applications that their customers use. And the thing that runs true to all of these roles and my current one is the ability to leverage strong communication skills, to talk up and down across different levels of an organization, and to be able to make sense out of cyber. And it sounds kind of basic, but the best thing that I can bring is bring all these disparate teams together and add value with both my knowledge and my skills. So my journey, and that was a really high level version, but it wasn't without bumps, peaks, and valleys, let me tell you. And my why continues to be worn around my neck here. It's my 3 kids. Every time I get up in the morning, I do it with them inspiring me, challenging me. We all have days where we need motivation. They are my motivation. And I often get asked questions by different groups on, hey, what advice would you give me, or what advice would you tell your children relative to this career field that's booming? So number 1, don't ever lose sight of who you are. Meaning, it's never too late to step into this industry or pivot. So if you're trying something, you're not sure what you want to do, try something else. Raise your hand to your leaders, raise your hand to your peers. And I talk to these ladies all the time and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, bounce things off of other people. So number 1, it's never too late to step in, move up, step around. So recognize the strengths that you bring. Number 2, and I struggle with this a lot, and maybe because life is so busy, but if you're ever saying, gosh, I'm not making the progress I need to, or to Chanel's point, trusting in the timing, I really try to pause. And I found a quote this morning that resonated. Take a look in that rear view mirror and look at how far you've come. 10 years ago, Kate in her, I don't even want to say how old I was then, could never imagine where Kate is now. And I have learned to not compare myself to my peers because my story is unique, but validating myself through even a 1-minute meditation on that rear view mirror look is critical to your forward progress and success, because it will serve as your foundation. And so that's number 2, look in the rear view. Number 3, we have this call to action. So each of us has a responsibility to stand for one another. One of my most precious responsibilities at Accenture beyond my day-to-day is leading inclusion and diversity and equity in our South Market unit. I get to work with Chanel and many others in there. And it's because I believe, who am I if I don't stand for you? So at the end of the day, I, as a woman in cyber, have a responsibility to you and you and you. And I am where I'm at because of a male ally. So it doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your skin is, what your creed is. Take care of one another. Do the right thing. We can't do it alone. So let's help each other on the process. I am now going to pass it to Avani.
Thank you, Kate. That was great. Both of you shared so much that I can definitely relate to. So, hi everyone. My name is Avani Patel. I'm also senior manager out of our security practice, also based here in the South region in Atlanta. And to talk about my journey, so I also made a career change. It's really interesting. I don't get to talk about my journey often, but when sometimes folks work with me, they just assume I've been doing this for a very long time, and they're just usually really surprised, but in a very good way, when I tell them that, I actually started my career with event planning. I was an EA once. I was a project manager. I worked in HR. And then one day I decided, what's going on with technology? I'm seeing, a lot of folks pursue these careers. So, I decided to make a career change. So when I graduated from college, I had just a, business major. I really just kind of wanted to focus on something that had to do with people engagement. I really had an interest and passion for HR. I couldn't find an opportunity in HR right away, so I started with event planning. And then I, moved from 3 different jobs. This is, right out of school, and it was kind of a moment of like, what do I want to do? I have this degree now. I kind of know what I like. I kind of know what I don't like, but I don't really know what I'm super passionate about. And I got into HR, but, financial crisis hits, and HR is like the last place I want to be. There's not much job security left for me. So I started revisiting the chart that I make of, okay, what does Avani want to do in 5 years? What does Avani want to do in 10 years? And I started talking to a lot of my family and friends Most of my network is either in technology or in medical. And I knew I did not want to do medical. It's just not an interest. I can barely watch through some of the shows, can't get through it. I'd just be a horrible person in the medical field. So I was like, technology sounds really interesting. And it was so broad. It's not like I'm going to go work in technology. There were different areas. And I started networking to learn about what do people do in their day-to-day. I went back to school, got my master's in computer information systems. And I kept seeing these signs at the airport for Accenture, but I had no idea what they do. I just know that there were these, pretty signs at the airport. So I got a call from a recruiter and, then started doing my research, learned a little bit about Accenture, the culture, the core values, and decided, you know what, this sounds like a great opportunity. And it's been an amazing decade. I feel like I've never worked for a company where I truly felt empowered. I love this session and topic today because I feel like everything I was unsure about in my 20s, my 30s, I was like, this is it. This is where I want to be, and coming into technology, it was very scary. I think, some of us talked about imposter syndrome. Yes, it was there, There weren't a lot of people like me when I first decided to even go to school. I remember taking some classes and I was so intimidated. It was mainly a lot of young males around me, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this though. I really want to try this out. I'm gonna do this. People talked to me about cybersecurity, and I thought it was going to work out well, and it did. So when I first joined Accenture, one of my favorite things was as an analyst, there was a lot of training and development programs, but there was a lot of mentors. So while you have, your core group of project leads, your people leads, your career coaches, there were a lot of people who were just welcoming. Hey, Avani, what did you do before Accenture? What's your background? What are you passionate about? And I felt like throughout my career in technology, and, specifically, it was mainly here at Accenture, I felt like as I grew, every step forward to a new position, new project, whether it was me trying a new area in cybersecurity or trying a new industry, there was always a lot of mentorship. And that's one thing I really enjoyed, and I think that helped the barriers. Now, was it always perfect? No, of course not. Like some of you mentioned, I definitely had some setbacks. I've definitely been in positions where I've walked in a room and I felt empowered and I would speak my mind, and then people would come up to me and say, wow, you're so strong. You're so confident. And I would just look at them and think, okay, you're a strong, confident man too. What's your point? It was just interesting to understand that when you finally felt, the courage to just step into a room and not worry about your gender, not worry about your race, and just have a seat at the table, that people actually thought that was complimenting you, but it really wasn't, So there are definitely, situations where I had to learn to work with people and I had to ignore the noise. I've had many people try to tell me I'd be really good at PMO. One of the reasons I probably was an EA, same reasons, oh, you're really good at planning. Yes, everybody should have some time management and organization. But people would say things. So there are definitely some barriers. And I think what really helped me, and I think, Kate, you mentioned this, male allies. I've had a lot of men, specifically here at Accenture, who have jumped in even when I didn't see a red flag, and just really push and say, hey, don't do that. Your imposter syndrome's coming back. I see that. You just said that. Don't say that, say no and stop it. It's not because you're a woman. You're here. You're a leader. You're one of, we are all the same. We're a team. So I think that's really one of the things I really enjoyed. And I think some of the advice I'd give to my younger self is, really, really network and really learn, and just, you have to learn to mute people. You have to learn to not worry about what other people are doing or what other people are saying. If you're interested and you're passionate in learning and doing something, you have to make the time. Does that mean sometimes I have to say no to something because it's going to help me? Yes, and that's okay. And you have to learn to respect your own boundaries, and just be really open to what's out there. In cybersecurity, it's not like when I was in HR, I felt like there was a path forward, but I knew there were only certain roles where I could kind of focus. And when I walked into Accenture and started learning about technology and cybersecurity, I was like, wow, there's just so much here to learn. And it's okay if you don't know everything. I think it's just important to know that it's okay not to know everything. Just network, you know, if you're interested and passionate to learn something, go learn about it, you know. But like everybody else said, just be you. I think that's what makes us really good leaders, is we want to grow a practice. We want to help empower other women, and just men and women, and really ensure that, you know, if they're going to be successful in their career, the first thing is they have to really accept themselves. They have to know where they're at. They have to be okay with that. And if they want to do more and if they want to be different, then they have to just put in the time, you know. And I think that's one thing I really like about being here is, like, I show up to work every day and I know I'm my own unique personality, but I love that I can be that way. I love that I don't have to walk into an environment and try to be like anybody else. And, you know, when you're passionate and you enjoy the work, everything, including success, is just all natural and it just all happens. So that's kind of my journey, and, you know, why I'm here and how it's all worked out. And I'd love to answer more questions if anybody has any in the chat box. I think next we have Joanna.
Yeah, hi everyone. They saved the oldest for last. I am the fossil of the group. Accenture has very young fossils. But I am a managing director in Accenture Security. I actually, back in the day, you know, all these women with master's degrees and such, I double majored in math and marine biology. So I literally learned to count fish. Coming out of college, I was a little bit stuck because for most of my college career, I really thought I was going to go to medical school. And I decided kind of late in the game that that wasn't going to be the right choice for me. And I didn't know what was. And my dad actually suggested looking into consulting. And I looked at, you know, back then it was the big six, 1998, actually late 97. You know, it was Price Waterhouse, and that was different than Coopers and Lybrand, and Deloitte, and, you know, then Anderson Consulting and KPMG, and Ernst and Young, I guess, and I don't remember who else. But anyway, I looked at all the websites, and honestly, the only place that really appealed to me was Anderson Consulting. Fortunately, I applied and got the job. I was a little nervous at one point that I would or wouldn't, but I did. And at the time, they grouped you into kind of one of four major buckets, depending on your degree. And for me, as a science major, I got put into process. And my first job was actually on the conversion team for Sun Microsystems to get them off of CSC mainframes and onto their own servers. And obviously I knew nothing about that. I was mostly a note taker and, you know, did documentation and things like that, but it was a great experience. And as was typical of that time, we got this huge conversion project done, big party, yay, congratulations, we did it. And then there was a realization of, oh crap, the auditors come in 3 months and we didn't even think about security. So, you know, I was looking to do something a little bit more technical. I liked that project. I liked that client. And so, you know, the leadership approached me and said, hey, you know, we've got to do all the security stuff. Would you be interested in being part of that team? Sure, that sounds interesting. Cool, I'll do that. And, you know, 23.5 years later, here I am still doing security. So obviously that worked for me. It's interesting, you know, seeing now, you know, back in my time, security wasn't even a word that was used in college, you know, and then some number of years later, some colleges started having like a class. And now there are actually whole degrees you can get in security, which is really cool. So, you know, in terms of how things have changed, that's one of the big ones. But you know what I was doing in security back then? Identity management. Right. So it's interesting because obviously the foundational pieces of security have not changed at all, really. You know, the thing that I used to say the most 23 years ago is users are bad for security. Guess what? Users are still bad for security, right? It hasn't changed. Now, how they do the damage has changed a lot, right? The environments have changed a lot, but the foundational concepts have not changed. So, I kind of moved through my career, obviously, with a math and marine biology degree. I was never the coder. I was never the administrator. I spent a lot of time because I learned to write, and I learned to write scientific papers. I did a lot of writing policies, and then starting to implement those policies. Like, okay, if it says thou shalt do this, how do you actually do that, right? Did a lot of identity in my early years. And then in like 2003, I started looking for a new job. Back then I lived in California, and we didn't have a very large security presence in the West. So I had to get on a plane every week, and I flew to clients, and it just got exhausting. And I made manager, and all I could think was, I have so many responsibilities and I'm doing so much work now. I can't imagine what it must be like to be a senior manager. And I don't think I can do that. I think it's too much work and I'm almost breaking as it is. So I started looking for, I started interviewing a little bit, and I didn't actually find the right role until early 2004, when I moved to industry. And the company that took me needed someone to kind of fix their access services team and their identity management. So it was really an operations role. And we went from being kind of the most notoriously hated team in all of IT to being the example of how to do, kind of combined onshore, offshore work in about a year and a half, which was a lot of work on my part. It was a lot of stress. I learned to have a very thick skin. I learned to be very unaffected by urgency, because it got to the point where everything in my world was on fire at every minute of the day. And it got to where it's like, you have to light a pretty big inferno under my ass to get a reaction, And honestly, in consulting, that's been a really good skill. I think in my personal life, it's been a little bit damaging, but that is what it is. So at that company, I worked my way out of that job in about 3.5 years. And then I became what I would call kind of a free agent. I ended up being put on the CIO's special projects team and doing various things that were more or less kind of process improvement oriented. And I did that for another 2.5 years and got bored and came back to Accenture, where I've been ever since. Along the way, I took on more of a sales role. I've been doing a lot of sales, but also still larger and larger program delivery. And so my fortes are really around project management, strategic architecture, getting the right people together in the right ways to make sure that delivery is smooth for our clients, and really focusing on, high tech in particular, and helping them build their scale, right? A lot of our high tech clients have good security of their own, just not enough of it. So in terms of, barriers that I've broken, I'm kind of fuzzy on what I actually did, but I can say that within Accenture Security proper, I was only the second woman to be promoted to managing director. At the time, I, doubled our female MDs from like 2% to like 5% or something like that. We're like now north of 30, which is really awesome between promotions and hires. So that's really good. But I think what I would tell my younger self is, and I'm still very much learning this lesson and trying to figure out how to balance it. As Kate said, as women, we try to do the right thing. And and for me, it's less about saying no. For me, it's more about, going and tackling those hard problems, kind of assuming that, that the rewards will come with that. and in the meantime, like at that company, and part of the reason I left was everybody liked the idea of me and liked what I could offer them, but ultimately they didn't want to put the time and the effort into letting me implement. And one of my peers who actually started a little bit more junior than I did, in the 6 years that I stayed a senior manager, he became director and then senior director and then VP, and I, looking back, would have not stayed as long. I love the company. I love the potential for what I could do. It's work that I wanted to do. It's work that I knew needed doing. And I kept hoping that somehow I could say the right thing or do the right thing to get somebody to say, yes, let's go do this. And they didn't. So it's always kind of that fine line, when you're evaluating your career, And as Chanel said, sometimes it's just about trusting the process and about going and doing better and, really taking the feedback and really digging deep of, hey, did I do all the right things? But sometimes you have done all the right things and it's still not panning out. So I think a really hard thing for women, there's so many jobs out there for us, right? Really learning how to balance between, did I really do everything I could and my career is progressing the way I would want it to, and I feel rewarded and I feel like I'm getting that recognition? Or have I really tried everything and it's not going at the pace I would like, and maybe I need to go find something else to do? And I think as women, that's really hard because we really want to keep trying. And well, what if I just try this one more thing? What if I just do this other thing? Right. So, just that perspective, especially right now, there are, for every one filled security role in this world, there are 4 open roles with nobody to fill them. So go out and be bold and advocate for yourself and for your skills. And as Chanel said, gifts. And as Avani said, your strengths and your power. Advocate for that because there's a lot of need out there, and go do things that are also beneficial for you and your career because there's room for all of that. And I guess, Amberly, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you all for just sharing your stories. And we have a ton of questions in our chat box. So let's start with what is the single best advice you have for a woman beginning their security career today?
Who wants to go first?
We'll start. I guess we can start with you, Kate.
Okay, great. Yahoo. So because I'm not too far away from beginning my security career, I think the best thing you can do is grow your network and pace yourself. There is a lot to learn, and pick an area that interests you. Dive a couple inches deep to the point where you feel, okay, I get this. And also, don't have to have every box checked to apply for a job. We have all said on this call that we had confidence and we were teachable. You cannot teach good work ethic. So if you bring a good work ethic and a good attitude, the rest will follow. So those are just a few tips that I think will yield dividends on the back end.
I agree with that. Should we just get like one answer per to try to cover as much ground as we can, Amberly?
Yes, I think that's a great way because we do have some really great questions in here. So the next one is, how has the security field changed since you started your security career? What is something new that we should be on the lookout for in the future?
Yes, I guess I'll take that one since I kind of addressed it. The fundamentals have not changed. The core problems of people trying to interact with technology safely, the market pressures of companies trying to get their products out there as quickly as possible, and in many cases, cutting security corners as a result. And then that constant pull of good guy versus bad guy. Right? There are lots of technologies that are used in really ugly ways that the creators of those technologies never envisioned because they had good intent. And the people who find the ugly ways do not have good intent. So that kind of traditional good versus evil struggle, none of that has changed. What is changing, of course, is just how fast things are changing. And, people are getting more, the bad guys are getting more desperate. They're also getting to be increasingly well-funded and increasingly well-educated. So it's harder to prevent their intrusions. A lot of it now, it used to be some kid in his basement trying to be, whatever. And now it's nation states and it's organized crime. People with a lot of money who are hiring people with master's degrees and PhDs, and they get vacation plans and, compensation, and they get paid a lot of money. So it's harder. But the other problem is, as our world continues to move faster and faster, we are all super saturated with information. Everything is happening a little faster than anybody can handle, even those of us who are in technology and deal with it every day. I mean, we do phishing exercises at Accenture every quarter. And I'm sure I know I have occasionally failed the phishing tests because I'm so busy. And so, I'll click on something. It's like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that, and the phishing has gotten a lot more sophisticated. When I think about my mom, who barely knows how to do email, there's no way she's not going to get phished, right? So it's getting in some ways easier. So it's up to us as security professionals to figure out how to protect people like my mom or people like any of us who maybe get too busy from ourselves and from the bad guys, right? Because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for when you're too busy or when you're distracted or when you don't know. And that's what they prey on.
All right. And then our next question is, how would you describe your passion for cybersecurity?
Chanel?
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of want to nominate Chanel for that one.
How would I describe my passion for cybersecurity? I kind of embody it, if you want to know the truth. If you know anything about me, I know we say that we are not our job. And so I'm not my job, but my career is a part of who I am, right? Like it does matter to me. I'm a mom of two little boys, a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. And, them being safe in this world where everything is connected to the internet, whether it be their games, their phones, their school, everything. So it's a personal thing for me. Like, it's like I want to protect my family. I want to protect my children. The things that they can be exposed to just inadvertently is vast. And I'm much more aware of it because I'm in this field. And I think that that integration of me, the woman instinct, that motherly instinct and wanting to protect. And then I'm in a field where I'm protecting who you are, your identity, what makes you you. And so in a weird way, my journey led me into a field that on the outside might have looked totally different than my communications degree. But in actuality, it's who I am at the core, someone who wants to protect. And then I'm able to use that communications degree to explain things that may be complicated to some, that may be so intricate that, you don't know whether it's good or bad, and to help you protect yourself. So that's how my passion has made way for me in this particular field.
All right. So I think we have maybe one or two more that we have time for. So the next is, why are there very little or no internship co-op positions for cybersecurity? And I'll shorten this a little bit. The industry is not giving room for starters to gain experience in the security industry. And what would your advice be?
Well, I can take that one quickly. Accenture does have a summer internship program.
We also have apprentice programs.
And we have our new apprentice program. Yeah. So go check us out because we can probably hook you up with something. Do know that our applications are happening about now or soon for next summer. So we do the process very early. So go look for that now, not later. But we do that. And honestly, I'm amazed that we have that because, as I said, a few years ago, nobody did. I don't know what other companies are doing. The other thing you might want to look for if you want to kind of target more companies than just Accenture is look at some of the large product companies as well. They might have something. Companies like Palo Alto Networks or Cisco or any of those kind of big name security companies that you can think of or that might be of interest to you, depending on what flavor of information security you're targeting, and see if they have something as well.
Can I add to that? I know this is going to sound trivial, but I would love for whoever said that question to maybe pose that question differently, even though I know it is the absolute truth. But don't look at it as, how do I get in, that it's hard. Sometimes I heard someone say that brick walls are there to keep out the people who don't want it bad enough, and so to think about it, as a way of, hey, what can I do to focus myself a little bit more so that I can break down this barrier? You're right. You don't see as many of us. It doesn't matter because this is for you. And if this is for you, then it can't be taken from you. So in that, as you start to think about it differently, you'll realize that the way that you approach it will be different. And I know that that is not like, hey, you're going to help someone give you an opportunity, but you'll be surprised of what opens for you in the universe when you put it out there a little bit differently.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, Chanel, because I'm also thinking about kind of the typical statistics about women and applying for jobs, whether it's applying for, internships or full-time jobs. Women tend to be more like, if there are 10 requirements and they only meet 6 of them, they're like, ooh, I don't feel like I qualify. Whereas, a man in that same position will see that they meet 6 out of 10. They're like, oh yeah, I got this, and they apply with confidence. Remember the statistic I just gave you. For every 1 filled job, there are 4 open jobs with nobody to fill them, right? The demand in the security industry is enormous. So also learn, and this is a little bit more going into the, the next one, talking about having applied for a variety of positions. Think about how you might need to adjust your resume to really highlight the things that you've done, take some training. But there are very few companies that can afford to discount any resume right now, even with relatively low experience levels. Now if your resume comes off as I'd really like to break into security and I know nothing about it, that could be a problem. But if you can point to related experiences from your classes, from any internships you've done, anything like that, really focus your resume on your power and your strength and your related skills, and your training. And that's going to be attractive to somebody. I think companies are also struggling because, the salary demands are very high in security. And if they can get a little bit of a break by hiring somebody who's very junior, that might be appealing to them and give you the opportunity to kind of learn and grow on the job.
Yeah, I would say also stay active on, platforms like LinkedIn. And I don't mean, just blast folks and say, hey, I'm interested in security. Like, take the time. We mentioned, there's a lot of training opportunities out there that are free as well, right? Go take some time to learn about what is an area that you're interested in. Look at our site or look at any site you're looking at. Look at the job description and then really do some investment in networking. Reach out to some folks and tell them a little bit about yourself. And, like I mentioned, just a really genuine introduction to why you want to join security, what areas. I think networking can also, help you go a long way, because we've seen a lot of folks like ourselves who've come in and have done this career switch, but they've also, done a little bit of the self-investment and training up on something, or they may have a little bit of the interest and skill set, or there's also a lot of women who just work in technology and want to go switch and do something in cybersecurity. So I would say use LinkedIn as a powerful source of, you know, growing your network and just getting the word out there and kind of seeing what opportunities are out there through that.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We are close to time, so I'm just going to throw a slide up real quick while we wrap up. So again, I want to thank all of our panelists and Ulysses for doing this with us today. And you've heard some great things from our panelists. So if you're interested in a career at Accenture, I know we talked about our internship and apprenticeships. We have roles from our entry level all the way through our experienced hire. So you can use this QR code, or in the announcements, there's a link to register with us in Beamery. We have a full team, including myself, that will work to make sure we're finding you the right roles here at Accenture. You can also find all these wonderful women on LinkedIn, and presenters, if you want to put in the announcements, your LinkedIn information, that would be great as well. But if you do have any further questions, please reach out to us at any time, and we're very happy to have done this with you. And we look forward to more webinars with you in the next coming weeks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.